Okay, so could you talk a little bit about like the imagery on your work and how like that kind of comes about?
Yeah, I have sort of gained a cast of characters over the past many years that I drew because I was in a particular spot and a particular thing was sitting next to me and inspired me, or I looked and my friend who's a sculptor was making a deer, dog, bear, and drew that. And so I think that each sort of animal, bird, fruit, vegetable face comes from a particular time and place that I was working. And so they sort of represent a language almost to me, but they are less important about other people having the same reference to them as much as just sort of grounding them in the time and place I was working, and looked up and saw a bird fly by, and so I drew that on the pot. And I like the way that, I think that desire to decorate the things you make is pretty innate in us, and there's something about just sort of sketching my surroundings that makes it feel like it takes it to the place I was making it, and is sort of a connection to that.
Okay, so workshops, like when you teach them, and just kind of like, if you could talk a little bit about like the things that you potentially get out of like, giving the workshop, and then the things that you would like to see your students that are in the workshop getting out of the workshop. If you could talk a little bit about like the workshop kind of setting would be great.
Well, I really love workshops because I feel like it is an intimate way of gathering a group of people with the same interest in clay and love for clay, and in a way that people are trying to learn a new aspect or sort of shift their practice potentially, or just sort of even see the way someone else does things, because I think it's so valuable to watch as many people work as you can, since we all have different ways and styles and ideas and all this stuff. I think it's just really great to share that with others, and I like seeing when other people do it as well, because I feel like I learn so much from watching someone in their natural habitat working. And I think that's the fun thing about a workshop versus sort of a shorter class, is that there's this really long chunk of time to really see the flow of how things work in a space and time to create a body of work. And I guess what I'm hoping people will take away with it is just sort of an idea that you can really play and enjoy it and loosen up, and sort of all these gifts I was given as a student in Athens, Georgia, where that's kind of the baseline, is these very loose, lovely, full of life pieces. And I like sharing that kind of method with people because I learned so much from it, and it brings me so much joy to make that way.
Okay, so with that, expand a little bit on like what it has meant to you to have the mentors that you've had, and then how you kind of like then, give that gift on.
Okay. I feel I count myself very lucky that I live in Athens, Georgia, where I think probably the two best potters in the whole world. Just kidding. There are a lot of them that are really good. But Ron Myers and Michael Simon, I think we're kind of these godfathers of a really beautiful narrative style of pot that I'm really drawn to. I'm drawn to using them, I'm drawn to having them around, and the fact that I got to sort of work with those artists from a young age, having them reach out and invite me into their practice and sort of be there as mentors. Ron invited me to one of my first shows, and that was this huge gift that he gave me that got started kind of being in gallery shows. And I think we really need our mentors, and we also need to pass on the stuff we learn. I love in clay how there's sort of lineages that you can trace back, the teachers to the students to the teachers to the students, and there's sort of hopefully this like theme running throughout their work that I just think is really lovely. So yeah, I think that Athens, Georgia was the perfect place to learn pots, because Ted Sape is also another hero. Learned so much from them, and it's sort of like we just keep kind of passing it on, and I think it's really fun.
Last question. When you talk about like the making of pots and the sharing of meals and the celebration, if you could just kind of like, talk about how meaningful that is with your work and how that just kind of, incorporates.
Sure.
Okay.
That's right. Okay. Yeah, well, I come to pottery through food because my family, that's sort of the way we show love, the way we gather together. It's basically what we live for is food and eating delicious food. And I'm really a huge believer in the power of handmade objects and what they bring to the experience. So food that's made with love, presented in a bowl, kind of made almost sometimes for that particular meal even. It's like it brings such a depth of experience and that's sort of ritualistic almost, and gathering around a table, joining together, I feel like it brings in community and it brings in beauty and experience, and I just really love that part of life. I really love that, when you have a piece of pottery that someone made, it's almost like you're hanging out with that person. And during the pandemic, I especially realized how amazing it was to hold a cup made by a friend and drink something out of it at this time that we couldn't really be with other people. And it plays this part of warmth and joy and just sort of a slowness that I think we all need a little more of. It encourages you to really focus on the piece. If there's a big tactile aspect to it, you're going to start feeling that, and you're going to stop sort of thinking and moving and going a little bit, crazy like we all do in our current day and age. And I think that, using handmade things, whether with a group in a kind of ceremonial thing, even just like a tea party poured from the same pot into everybody's cup, or if you're alone and having a hard day and you pick out a cup that's really, brings a lot of warmth and love to you, it's just a really valuable thing. And so I like pots that feel alive, that have the energy of the person who made it.
About having traveled so much, just like the influence of travel, the things that you see on your experiences, people,
Okay.
different environments, and how that kind of influences your work.
Okay. I am extremely lucky in that my family was a very international family, and I was born in West Africa, but my family traveled and lived around the world, and there's something about the worldwide aspect of pottery, even the fact that before pottery we couldn't even cook food, it's like we needed a pot to create a place to boil lentils or to brew beer, and that connection that's so sort of all over the world, and the different ways people do the same thing and have themes that run throughout everything, and there's still specific styles and beautiful different ways of doing things, but it's all related and it's all connected and it's all been done before and it'll all be done again. And I just really love that part of pottery, and I feel like it's a really elemental part of life, and it feels very approachable. And my favorite pot is this wine jug that was made in the 15th century, and it's an Italian one, and it has this really awkward painting of what I imagine was like the painter's neighbor. And her face is a little bit funny, and it's like, I sort of relate to that in that I like to think that this guy was sitting there and like, I'll put something on there, it keeps it interesting to keep decorating things, and just thinking that you would paint your neighbor, and maybe she looks kind of crazy, but what are you gonna do? There's that aspect that I feel a connection to in both decorating the things we make being a really natural part of humanity, and also then what it brings to the experience and using it.
Fantastic.